Okay, it is November 12th. It's 70 degrees outside, and I have to winterize the boat. Supposed to get down in the 30s, I think, later today, if not later tonight, or I think tomorrow night. Sometime in the next couple days it'll be down in the 30s, so I want to get the boat winterized before it gets too cold. I did a winterization video last year and I didn't really put like a lot of detail into what I did, so I think I'm going to add a little bit more specifics on exactly what I'm doing, because I think I had people ask about that in the last year's video. But what I've already done so far is I've winterized the air conditioner. Last year I had to add some special fittings to the air conditioner to be able to winterize it, so I was able to use those this year and it worked really well. So basically what it was is there's a T in the line that goes into the air conditioner that has garden hose fittings, so I was able to hook a garden hose up to it and then just pour antifreeze down the garden hose through a funnel. So that worked out well. It's pretty easy to do this time. Last year it was a pain in the butt trying to get all that stuff set up. This year what I want to do is I got to winterize the fresh water supply and winterize the engine. So the only two things left. Fresh water supply. Ideally what we want to do is empty out the tanks, fill the tanks back up with antifreeze, and run the water until antifreeze comes out all of the fixtures. So that's what I'm going to do now, is get that tank empty and dump in some antifreeze. I also want to try to change the oil in the engine. Last time we were here, last week on the boat, we went out and got some fuel and came back so we have a full fuel tank. So it's always a good idea to make sure that at the end of the season you have a full fuel tank so condensation doesn't form inside the tank and get water in your fuel, which will cause problems, especially for a diesel engine. And then it's also a good idea to change the oil at the end, because you can get all kinds of corrosive things that build up in the oil over time, which sitting in the engine over the winter will cause problems and corrosion issues inside the engine. The last thing I want to do is change the impeller, just because it hasn't been changed in a while, so I want to kind of see what condition it's in right now and swap that out before I winterize the engine. The impeller that I need to change is down here in the raw water pump. So the raw water pump is this here. This is the fresh water pump, so that circulates the antifreeze through the engine and then through the heat exchanger. But this one has the impeller in it that needs to be changed. And usually this is very difficult to get to because the impeller goes in through the back side of it. So back in here, if you can make that out, it's got to go there. And there are several screws that hold that on there. This boat, though, has these thumb screws that I'm going to try to remove and see if I can get this off without taking the entire pump off. Normally you would have to take the entire pump off to get to it. This engine is a Yanmar 3GM 30F. My previous boat had the 2GM 20F, which is the exact same as this, but just had one less cylinder. So everything here is the same as the 2GM, and probably some other Yanmar engines of the same age. But my last boat, you had to remove this entire bracket to get the pump off to swap out the impeller. This time I want to try to do it without taking that off, because this boat has in the back some thumb screws to undo the cover that holds the impeller in. So I'm going to try to take the thumb screws off and see if I can get the impeller out of there and the new one in without taking the engine, or without taking the pump off the engine. Okay, so that didn't go as planned. I still had to take the pump off there just to get the impeller out. The impeller that's in here is this thing here. It's like this greenish color, and I actually have one of these that were a spare on the boat. It's called a Run Dry impeller from Globe Marine Products. I wasn't quite sure like how this was going to work because normally I use the black rubber ones that you normally see, like this one. This is a Yanmar part. I've actually had problems with these before, and I'm not sure why, what the problem was, but I've had these where I've installed them, and then just like within a short amount of time the fins break off, and I think it has more to do with maybe I was using cheap Chinese version of this instead of the genuine Yanmar, or it could have been dry rotted because it was old or something. But I had one in the last engine that I put in, and it didn't last very long before the fins started to break off. This one has been in there for 2 years, and it's still like in really good shape. There are no cracks or anything in it, and it seems to be like it's the same type as this one, the Run Dry. So I'm going to go ahead and put the Run Dry, this new one, in there, and I'll probably just hold on to this one just as a backup in case something happens that I need to put the other one in there. The thumb or finger bolts, or whatever you call these things, that were on the back of there, made it easy to take off. It also takes a special cover. This cover has 4 holes in it instead of the normal. I think there are 6 normally in here, and it looks like, yeah, there are normally 6, but this is like a heavier duty cover. It has a little rubber O-ring in here that's supposed to be replaced when you replace the impeller, and then these things here are supposed to make it easier to tighten up if you're doing it in a tight spot like this. But it was still it was easy to get off, but it was still too tight to get the impeller out. So I went ahead and took the whole pump off and pulled the impeller, and now I'm going to put this new Run Dry from Globe Marine Products in there. All right, are you ready?
Yeah, tell me when.
Okay, go ahead and start it up.
Oh, wait a minute.
Okay, shut it off! Shut it off! Okay, so normally what would happen is I would open up the seawater strainer and fire up the engine, dump antifreeze in there, but that did not work this time, because what would happen, it would start to suck antifreeze out of there, but then it would stop, and then it would just stop drawing out of there, period. So I thought maybe there was some sort of air issue because I had just done the strainer, so maybe there's an air bubble blocking it somewhere. So open the seacock, or close that strainer back up, open up the seacock, fire up the engine, and it works perfectly. And actually, because I changed out the impeller, the water flow was actually higher, or seemed higher than it normally is. So it was weird that when I shut off the seacock, opened up the strainer, that it no longer drew antifreeze or liquid from the strainer. So I noticed over to the right of the strainer, there's another little garden hose type cap on a T there. So I think previously that's how they winterized it, is you undo that cap, and that's where it goes into the strainer. And what I did is I just undid the cap, hooked a hose up to it, hooked a funnel up to the hose, and then dumped antifreeze into the funnel. And then I fired up the engine, and it started pumping. It was pumping, but only a small amount. So I'm not sure why the reduce in flow when the seacock is closed, when it's normally not like that. I don't know if it's related to the impeller change, getting air in there, or there's some other weird thing that's happening. But either way, I was able to get antifreeze into the engine, at least a couple gallons I ended up using during this whole process. So it's winterized enough for now. And of course, as boats go, something else to look into. Okay, so next step in winterizing the freshwater system is to get all of this put into right here. Now I've got 7 gallons of antifreeze in the fresh water tank. I'm going to turn on the water pressure and then come over here and turn on the faucets, which it sounds like I got one on here. Turn that one off for now. That one's on too. Okay, so this is the hot water first I want to get, because this has a water heater in it. So the water heater has about a 5 or so gallon tank. So I want to turn this on. This is the water that's left over in the pipes. And this should turn pink here shortly. There's some air coming out. And now it's starting to turn a pinkish color. And it looks like we have antifreeze. So I'm going to turn that one off. Now I'm going to come back here and get the hot water in the head. And there, that's pink. So do that. Now, one I almost forgot last time was the shower. I'm going to put the shower head in the shower drain. And then I'll just turn on the sump. So I'll turn the shower on until we get pink coming out of that. Okay, so now what we've got, all the hot water has had antifreeze run through it, and now we got to do the cold water. So the cold water is going to be the same, except there's one extra cold water. Actually, there's a couple extra cold water. So we'll do this cold water. And there we go. The cold water is always quicker, of course. This one here is a freshwater filter, so it's filtered water. And normally what I'll do with this is let this run through the filter, then change the filter out next year. And that one takes forever to run, so while that's running, I'll come back here, do the cold water here. Ooh, yikes, some air. Air bubbles. I think that's good. I'll do the cold water up here. Okay, and then the next one is the head is a freshwater head. So what I have to do here is turn that on, and then I'll turn it on, flush it a few times and let water run through there. So now we'll run the head until we get water running through that. All right, so last one that I forgot last year is there's a sprayer out here. And we'll run the sprayer until we get pink. So all of them are done, with the exception of this thing. Still has not turned pink yet, because it's going through that filter. Now I think what I noticed last time that this one ran is that I think it actually filters the pink color out of this, because this is already starting to smell like the glycol. So it's possible that this one is already done, but I'm going to let that run for a little bit and double check all of them, make sure that we have pink antifreeze coming out of all of the fixtures. So right now I'm catching some of that antifreeze from the hot water, and I'm going to take this, I'm going to take it over here and dump it into the drain for the ice box. Okay, and I'm also catching this from the hot water. I'll dump this into the bilge, run both the bilge pumps, so we have antifreeze running through the bilge pumps as well. Okay, winterization is pretty much done. I did the engine, had that issue with, I think it was siphoning water out of the back end, so I did check that. The siphon valve cleared some gunk out of it and it seemed to be functioning, so maybe that was the problem. So I have to keep an eye on that and check that next time I start the engine. So what I normally do in the winter is keep like a couple gallons of antifreeze on hand. So if I want to start the engine sometime during the winter, I can go ahead and start it and re-winterize it once I'm finished running it. And that having that little extra T is kind of handy on there. I didn't actually realize that was on there. I've been dumping it into the strainer, but having the T on there is handy if you need to re-winterize it quickly. Normally what you could do if it were functioning properly is you could hook a hose up to that T, take the other end of the hose, put it directly in the gallon of antifreeze, and it will draw the antifreeze right out of the gallon of antifreeze, which is kind of handy to have. So I'll have to get myself a hose for that and try that out next time I come down to the boat. I still need to change the oil, so I'll probably do it when I come down to change the oil. But I still need to change the oil, and I have an oil filter on hand, so I'll be able to do that. I have enough oil, I believe, on hand, and I'll probably do that either tomorrow or next week, depending on the weather. So I think I'll go ahead and call that a wrap and say that's the end of this video and the end of the season with our winterization video, which I think is going to be like the end of season video. And I'll probably stick some other videos on up over the winter when I start getting projects and stuff going. I want to do some sewing projects this winter, so once I start doing those, I'll probably put a couple videos on there about the sewing project. So other than that, that's all I've got for today. So I'll go ahead and sign off, and if you haven't already, click like the video, subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and I will see you all next season.